Now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's WordStream webinar, 2018 Recap, AdWords to Google Ads, and everything else that's changed this year. My name's Michelle, and I'm just here to kick things off before I pass things off to our presenter today. So, for those of you who aren't familiar with WordStream, and I'm hearing you that there's a little bit of an echo. The echo should be getting better right about now. Just had a little bit of a mute issue, but definitely just keep letting us know. We've had a little bit of audio trouble, so love all the feedback. Thank you. And we're seeing that it's fixed now, so great. We'll keep rocking and rolling. So for those of you who aren't familiar with WordStream, you may know us for our content, and that's awesome. We've got lots of good blog posts and free guides and things like that. But what a lot of people don't know is we also offer a software solution that makes it super easy to optimize your online advertising efforts across Facebook, Google, and Bing. So if that sounds like something you might be interested in, for sure go to wordstream.com following the webinar and see a little bit more about what we can offer. While you're doing some exploring, we definitely encourage you to follow us on all of our social media handles. You can find us on Facebook, you can find us on LinkedIn, you can find us on Instagram. Just search WordStream anywhere and you will stay up to date with all of the latest and greatest that we produce here. So now my next steps. It's my favorite part of every webinar. I like to, and there you have those social handles, a little bit of delay on the slides. And this is my favorite part. I'll introduce our panelists for today, my good friend Mark. One more thing that I will mention though, is that we are recording this webinar, so if you have to hop off at any time, you can do so, and you'll see an email hit your inbox in the next 48 hours or so, and that'll have the recording and the slide deck. And we definitely, one of Mark's favorite things in webinars is to answer your questions, so just where you chimed in about all those audio issues, feel free to chime in with questions throughout, and we'll save time for that at the end. So a little bit more about Mark. As well as loving questions, he also loves data. He is our senior data scientist at WordStream, more than 6 years of experience in paid search. He wins all these awards. He's always voted one of the top experts in the industry, which is why we're so lucky to have him here at WordStream and why you all are so lucky to have him present the latest and greatest from Google today. So enough humble bragging about Mark. I'll pass it off to him.
Muted.
Awesome. Thanks, Michelle. And thanks, everyone, for sticking through us. Obviously, we're going to get out all the problems early on, just like 2018. Get out the problems out early so you can focus on the great. Hopefully, right now, if you're hearing audio problems, keep passing that messaging through. Otherwise, it should be smooth sailing from here on out. But I'm really excited to talk about 2018. I think that in the past, when we've done these webinars, these recap webinars of the year, there's a lot of good and bad and stretching along the way. Honestly, I think 2018's been a really great year for paid search advertising on the whole, and a lot of stuff has changed. Just looking past, going through my notes from the past year as we were beginning to consider this webinar and beginning to make this webinar, there's just so much stuff that I would not have seen coming in 2018, and just like our dearest, best, most relatable role model, Ariana Grande. We started the year as a dangerous woman, and then we fell in love, we fell out of love, we almost got married, and for that we're so grateful. So much has changed in name only, but has grown so much. This is a bad metaphor. Now that I'm saying it out loud, it's a bad metaphor. But a lot's changed, and a lot's gotten better along the way. So let's just dive right into it. First and foremost, obviously, this is how we promoted the webinar. This is the biggest elephant in the room that we could bring up. Google AdWords went through a huge rebrand. And obviously, we've known Google AdWords since the year 2000. It is how we went on and we bought our paid search media. Middle of the year at their Google Marketing Next Summit, they made the announcement and they made the rebranding to a simpler Google Ads. Obviously, after 16 years, I said that I've been in this industry for 6 years. Some of us have been in this industry for 18, 20 years at this point, and people have called this Google AdWords from the very beginning. That name wasn't necessarily going to stick immediately, but we're actually seeing, looking over the past year of data, people are now following along with that branding. It took us a while to start calling it Google Ads. It took us a while to really depreciate the name Google AdWords. But today, just as many people search for Google Ads as they do for AdWords. And looking at this Google Trends chart, we see the fact that people have accepted the name. We're going to expect that Google Ads to be the norm in the future. There are already plans to change the way that you log into Google Ads to, rather than logging in through AdWords.com, as you might imagine, that's likely going to go away. Basic functionality around the login process, basic functionality around what you see when you log into Google Ads, basic functionality around, we've already changed the API and Google Ads Editor. A lot of things that we know as separate platforms today are likely going to continue to change in the next year, and we're already seeing those changes happen today. So it's really easy to look at this and say, okay, Google AdWords became Google Ads, and just accept the fact that it's a rebranding and that's all it is. But it is more symptomatic of larger problems that not larger problems, but larger changes that advertisers are going to expect to see in the near future. Of course, if you look at this chart, a lot of us might just say, hey, that's cool that some people are searching for AdWords differently than they were searching for Google Ads, but that's hugely important to us as search marketers, particularly for us who are agencies. I know that, for instance, we've been a huge focus this year from an SEO perspective, from a paid search perspective, as a agency or a tool provider or as a consultant who provides paid search advertising help, the fact that we're going to have to change the ads, the words in our ads, the keywords in our ads accounts, the content on our pages to speak to this new search term. It's a huge thing that a lot of advertisers, a lot of agencies specifically, are going to have to change on their site and their ads just to stay relevant, just so that you know that when people are searching for you, that you're still showing up here. So this is a little bit of a meta moment for advertisers whom provide advertising. That for the longest time, we have been able to dominate the SERPs for AdWords help or for AdWords related keywords. Even WordStream today is having to play a new game with our own marketing to make sure that we're showing up for the correct terms. And I know that we're not alone in that case, that right now, the Google Ads keywords, it's a free pickin'. A lot of advertisers are flocking to it, and it's the Wild West effectively. So there's a lot that just us as advertisers, if we're running a business, we need to know about just to stay competitive and make sure that our future clients or future prospects know about us. So how you market your own marketing agency is certainly quickly changing. And I know that that sounds very semantic to a lot of us, but that's huge. But beyond just the obvious, hey, I would still like to have a business in 2019 kind of conversation, if you read one level back and you actually look at what Google's doing with this change, why would you have a rebrand? This change does kind of formalize a huge shift in Google's overall strategy. When 2001, when Google AdWords launched, that's really an effective or a really representative way of how Google sold ads. It sold its ads through words. The name itself explained what it was doing. But today, Google doesn't just focus on keywords. We have a whole lot of audience solutions. They have a display network. They have Gmail. They have YouTube. They have shopping. They have keywordless campaigns. And even within our search campaigns, our keywords are continuously changing beyond just the semantic. So this does open up a huge visibility into where Google's focus, both in 2018, but beyond is. that this is a change away from the semantics of what keywords used to guide us through. And that does transition us really hugely into the second largest thing that happened in 2018. It's that keyword match types changed again. So we know that for a long time, advertisers had used a multitude of match types between exact, phrase, broad modified, broad match keywords. And we've all built our accounts with this understanding of exactly the type of traffic we'd be getting from certain types of keywords. But slowly and surely, Google's been rolling back a lot of those protections, particularly for exact and phrase match keywords. So in 2015, Google began automatically matching queries to phrase and exact match keywords for close variants, things that were semantic variants, spelling errors, singular plurals, etc., things that were very, very close to what those keywords were. Then in 2017, Google began serving ads to keywords that were reordered, had functional words added, or they were removed or changed. So things like adding the word the or for an article or a preposition, or removing those words, or had similar types of prepositions or articles removed that didn't necessarily change the meaning of the keyword, but might not have been included in your keyword itself, suddenly began showing ads for. Similarly, if those words were out of order, so here we have the keyword running shoes matching up to the query shoes running. Although those words are the same words, they were simply out of order, Google would begin showing an ad for those. A lot of that is semantic, a lot of that is small when you compare it to the change that Google made actually as recently as October. And this is both a change that applied to Google and Bing here, but what actually happened was now keywords are going to begin or have begun matching to close variants that share the same meaning of your keywords, even if that's not a semantic relationship. So that includes things like synonyms, paraphrased words, or results with the same intent. So the keyword here for Yosemite camping now includes things like Yosemite National Park camping, or Yosemite campground, or campsites in Yosemite, where although these are certainly related terms, they don't share that same semantic intent. And Google and Bing might begin implying how these keywords match out to searches beyond our original intent here. So all of a sudden now advertisers have a whole lot less control over their particular keywords. This is of course great if you're in an industry where a lot of people search for your particular product or service with very varying keywords all around. So for instance, an injury lawyer no longer needs to worry about writing different keywords for accident injury lawyer or accident lawyer or for injury attorney, where those are all synonyms or implied. But Google's not the greatest at necessarily assuming intent here. Here we have an example of the keyword leather handbags reaching out to the search term for leather purses. Now, I'm not personally an expert in the handbag industry, but I've been told that these are two entirely separate bags, and that someone who is searching for a handbag or a purse might be looking for something completely different than necessarily that original keyword. Even if they're contextually related, they are not the exact same item, and that this likely is going to get some traffic to our site that is just simply irrelevant. What we've seen, just looking over the past couple of months, is that this change to the meaning of keyword match types, particularly exact match keywords, here means that we're showing for a whole lot more queries, which means we have a whole lot less control and ultimately more cost for advertisers. Just looking over the past few months, we see the fact that these close variant impressions have increased by 37% for these keywords. They've been attracting about 24% more clicks from these types of mismatch or these close variant impression keywords. And that all said and done, that means that they're spending 11% more on these types of keywords just because Google is automatically matching them out to these types of searches. This is without advertisers' consent. This is without advertisers creating or intentionally trying to target this traffic, that Google is taking this control away from advertisers. So fairly recently, Google, advertisers have had to play a whole lot more active role in managing their accounts and following through, making sure that they're showing for the most accurate searches and adding negatives, managing their accounts so that they're not hitting these types of unwanted traffic along the way. Of course, that wasn't the sum of all the bad things that was going on in the world. Of course, advertisers have been losing control, and a lot of it hasn't even been their intent. We couldn't talk about 2018 without talking about data privacy and abuse concerns growing. So we all know, if you've seen the news this year, you've likely heard about the Cambridge Analytica scandal surrounding Facebook, where Cambridge Analytica was able to access the API through Facebook to begin to do some sketchy things with some Facebook data that is definitely well outside of Facebook's terms of services. That's obviously been dominating the news, but we know the fact that beyond just what's on Facebook, other tech players like Google had a huge scandal earlier this year that ultimately ended up killing off Google Plus because of security breaches with that. And even Amazon had a similar concern earlier this year, where people were able to get in and view a lot of personal, private customer data through Whole Foods and begin to deduce their entire Amazon behaviors. Beyond just the tech world, though, a lot of places from Marriott to Delta to apps you might have on your phone, to where you get your coffee in the morning. A lot of these individual places have had a huge privacy and data concern story pop up about them in 2018, and that's not going unnoticed. It's really hard as someone who is in the search industry or who is in the advertising industry to not notice when Google CEO, Facebook CEO both have to testify before Congress about specifically what's going on with their advertising platforms and how users' data is being treated. And of course, the United States is looking at potential regulations around this, but beyond the United States, the EU is currently already rolling out updates around this. Earlier this year, we saw the GDPR rollout, which would impact how advertisers can collect and maintain users' personal data. And Article 13 is still in motion over in the EU, which definitely protects a whole lot around copyright information, around content producers' rights. So there's a whole lot of things going on in 2018 that we as advertisers have seen impact how we can potentially manage our campaigns. Now, the networks are being proactive in this, and we have seen that Facebook has updated a lot of things on their own end to prevent future abuse already. So over the course of 2018, if you were managing Facebook accounts, you know the fact that Facebook has periodically updated, removed, and changed the way that you can target users using their platform. Fairly recently, we just created a blog post, a new infographic around what is currently available in Facebook, and I'll make sure that we share that in the chat here. Make sure you check it there, and by all means, continue bring through questions through that particular Q&A portal. But a lot of things have changed over in Facebook. Facebook used to have quite literally probably about 1,200 individual ways that you could target a user on their platform. That has slimmed down a lot. I know that you can no longer specifically target people based off of things like their job or their job title or their school without selecting from a predefined list. So that does narrow down our targeting somewhat there, but it was set up to prevent abuse cases. And you're seeing the fact that not only is Facebook improving its ad targeting for abuse, but it's also changing its reporting metrics to reflect past abuse. So particularly those of you who are advertising on video are now seeing a whole lot more accurate and a whole lot more realistic understanding of who is in fact engaging with your videos on Facebook than necessarily what you saw in 2017. So although these are certainly challenging, it does get us to a better advertising state in 2018 and 2019. Facebook's been at the center of attention for some time now, but that doesn't mean that Google and Bing aren't actively changing what they're doing. For instance, certain industries now require authorization to even run ads. Top of that list is, of course, political ads. We can't necessarily sidestep that conversation, but both for Facebook, Google, and Bing, if you want to run any kind of ads related to any kind of ballot initiative, it does require a myriad of approvals from state and local governments. But just to show up on these particular networks doesn't mean that you have to be authorized to run those ads. I know that earlier this year, I had to submit my social security, my driver's license information, fill out some paperwork just to be able for us to run advertisements for political candidates on Google and Bing. Similarly, Facebook has rules and regulations about who can even run those types of ads. But beyond the political side, rehab and addiction services require a separate certification before you can begin to run ads. Technical support, third-party technical support now requires additional certification processes before you can run ads. And cryptocurrency and financial services related to cryptocurrency or Forex or futures or along those lines do require there to be oversight and to make sure that what you're providing through the Google Ads platform or through the Bing Ads platform is in fact a quality service and that you're up to your license to sell those types of things. But beyond that, customer match, we see customer matches now disabled to new advertisers without having met spend criteria. So we see the fact that advertisers who just start in Google Ads and are not spending a whole lot are no longer able to go and create customer match to target their ads. Similarly, we see the fact that advertisers who are using call-only ads, as of November, now they have to change the messaging that they have in their ads to make sure that's very clear who it is that they are calling. And when you click on one of those ads on Google, that they answer the phone and are transparently answering with that business name when they pick up the phone, so that there is not any kind of bait and switch conversation within call-only ads. There's a whole lot of policy changes. I could talk about policy all day about what's changed in 2018. I know that no one wants to hear that, but there's just so much that's been changing on that I wouldn't be able to continue without talking about the big things right here. Beyond that, we saw that not all policies that change were related specifically to data or abuse cases, but we even see things such as Google grants becoming appreciably harder. So those of us who have been managing nonprofits in the past, we know that nonprofits have always been fairly simple. Previously, any nonprofit, any 501c3 organization could be granted up to $40,000 in complimentary search advertising. And that the only restriction with that $40,000 was the fact that you couldn't bid more than $2 per click here. So it was very easy to go, this is effectively free money. A lot of advertisers would run, or a lot of nonprofits would run ads through Google AdWords and be able to get a whole lot out of it without a lot of oversight, because this was effectively free money and it was honestly challenging to spend the full amount of money back then. But starting January 1st, 2018, now that amount of money that these advertisers are given has been cut down to 10K. Of course, if you were previously in that 40K program, Google hasn't kicked you out of it, but today you can only get up to 10K if you're just starting. And that just to continue running these ads, these advertisers have to be active in their account. They have to respond to an annual survey about the fact that they're still running these ads, get some feedback. We see the fact that these advertisers have to be using an accurate way to track conversions. They have to be targeting a specific region, and that the keywords they use have to be very catered and very specific to their campaigns, which means that they can no longer use very generic keywords like donation or donate or anything that might have just gotten them a lot of traffic. They can no longer use single word keywords low quality score keywords are a no. Every campaign has to have a completely built out structure with a minimum of 2 ad groups, 2 ads per ad group, and have at least site links. But the big kicker to this is that all the accounts have to maintain a 5% click-through rate. And if they don't maintain all of these rules, that account could be suspended and that grant account could go offline for a while Google reviews exactly how they're going to bring them up to compliance. Now, that is a huge shift from Google, and we see the fact that in 2017, grant accounts previously averaged a 4.41% click-through rate, which means that most advertisers walked into 2018 with far below the minimum 5% click-through rate just to stay active in Google Ads. This has been a huge challenge for grant advertisers to make sure that they're on their accounts, that they're actively managing it, they have complete built-out structure here, and that they're hitting this minimum performance threshold. Otherwise, they won't be able to advertise in Google altogether. I know that this is a huge deviation for a lot of these nonprofits and a lot of these people who are managing nonprofits in their spare time just to maintain their Google AdWords account and not see this grant money just disappear all of a sudden. But focusing on the positive, Google has made it easier over the past year to get more clicks to your site. That we see the fact that search ads have become larger than ever this year. And so we know the fact that if you've been doing advertising for a long time, Google used to run these standard text ads. It had a headline and it had 2 25, 35 character lines of text at the bottom. It had 90 characters running. A couple years ago, they expanded their text ads so that now we have 2 headlines and a larger description field. Well, at the time, that was a huge change. It was a 50% more characters. It was the largest change to Google AdWords at the time. But earlier this year, in September, Google actually updated that again, where now your ads become even larger, and they're now 300 characters at maximum. So reviewing the things that changed, whereas previously we had 2 headlines, we now get up to 3 headlines, which means that we've gained 30 characters just in the headline itself. Beyond that, we still have the URL with 2 path fields. But now we also pick up an extra line of description and an extended description characters in each line. So now we have 3 headlines with 30 characters each, 2 path fields. We have 2 description lines, each with 90 characters. This comes to a whopping 300 characters. This is larger than a tweet. This is the largest change that you're going to see to Google Ads, excuse me. This is the largest search ad to ever show up on the SERP. It gives us 300 characters max, and this is almost twice as large as the ads that we had been managing over the past 2 years. So of course we're seeing a huge shift in performance from these ads, and largely for the better. But as we begin approaching this, I could talk for hours just on writing these new ads, but as you begin to approach writing these new ads, think of your audience when you're rewriting your ads, and think of how or who is searching for these types of things. We know that if I'm searching for the keyword refrigerator repair, I'm going to show an ad to everyone who's searching for that keyword refrigerator repair. And the difficulty behind that is the fact that not everyone is the same person. That a homeowner and a renter simply have very different things that they're looking for in someone who's going to repair that refrigerator. As a renter, I can confidently say that I really don't care about price when I'm looking to repair my refrigerator, whereas I'm sure that my landlord sure does. Similarly, a do-it-yourselfer or a busy parent has completely different motivations around time than necessarily a kitchen manager who is currently losing profit every single minute that that refrigerator is not running. So knowing this, think of your audience and think of the different personas that are potentially searching for your different keywords when you're beginning to write your ads. Because we know the fact that this particular ad can't speak to all of these different people, each with their own incentives and each with their own sensibilities towards things like price and timing and service. So don't try to use this as an opportunity to write the best ad or a best ad for all people, try to think of the best messages for different customers. So knowing the fact that, okay, our mass market customers, most people, we're all sensitive to price. The message same-day service and free quotes, that free means a whole lot to a lot of people. But there are other customers who care more about other things. A business customer, for instance, is going to be looking for a fast fix. And so they're looking for a fast repair and a fast response. Or a past customer who is searching for this is going to have a little bit sensitive search, given the fact that they've previously had this service from you. And you want to make sure that they feel like you're getting the best service along the way. So as you're looking at your own products and your own services and beginning to write your new ads in this largest ad that you possibly could, largest ad that's ever been on Google, think to different people when you're crafting this message. And you'll see the fact that that's actually the #1 challenge that most people are having. When we look across a lot of advertisers today, 44% of advertisers today only have one active ad in every ad group, which means that they're not able to speak to a whole lot of different personas or a whole lot of different customers. And that's obviously a huge challenge, because when we see the fact that those who do have more ads per ad group actually have a much higher click-through rate, that not just by writing a better ad, but simply by writing multiple ads or varied ads is a very effective way just to make sure that you're always able to serve the right ad to a different type of customer. And so, of course, you could go through and you could write 2, 3, 4, 5, 9, 20 different ads for every ad group, but that's, of course, a lot of work for advertisers. So Google also introduced a new ad format called responsive search ads. And this is honestly where it hits home to me. As a data scientist, this is where things actually get very exciting. When you're writing a responsive search ad, and this is currently available to all English-speaking advertisers today, you can go in and rather than writing a complete ad at once, you're just going to write in up to 15 headlines or up to 4 description lines. And then Google is going to select from those different headlines you provided and those different description lines you provided. It'll use up to 3 headlines and 2 descriptions to build the same ad experience you saw previously. And what we see is that just because we provide Google with a number of different headlines and a number of different descriptions and let it match those for us and begin to automatically test those different messaging together to different users, this automatically allows Google to test and optimize over 43,000 different variations of your messaging. So if you have different personas or you have different offers you'd like to test out, this is really the fastest way to test out multiple different types of messages to multiple different types of audiences at once, and then have Google begin to machine learn specifically what types of messages resonate most with different types of customers. And this is really exciting, definitely for me as someone has a data science background, but even just for advertisers, they're seeing good performance here. So we're able to use responsive search ads to highlight different messages, highlight different values, different solutions, different offers, different call to actions to our searchers, so that we're not having to guess that all of our business customers are going to respond to a particular offer or different message. This actually quickly allows me to test a lot of offers, a lot of messages to a lot of different personas across the board. And so as you're thinking about your different audiences or different demographics who are searching for you, Google has you covered there as well, that they introduced a number of new audiences and demographic targeting solutions this year too. So previously, back in 2017, Google released some targeting options for demographics on the search network. It allowed us to target users based off of characteristics such as their age, their gender, their income, or their participation or their membership in a remarketing list. So people who had been to your site in the past. That's obviously a great place to start, but in 2018, Google began introducing some new targeting options as well. The very first that they introduced, probably around May or June, was in-market audiences for search. And so in-market audiences, it's not necessarily a demographic, but what in-market audiences is it looks at a number of people who are searching on the same type of keyword. So people who are searching for, if you're buying the keyword car dealership, you would normally serve an ad to everyone who is searching for the keyword car dealership. But one thing you know about people who buy cars is that most of us don't do one Google search for a purchase like that and then click and convert and buy a $30,000 car the very next day. In fact, most people who are seriously considering buying a car pull multiple searches. They look at different car models. They look at car loan financing. They compare costs. They look at different reviews, and they compare different makes and models over the course of a day, a week, a month, several months. Google luckily has all of that search history, that browsing history across the Google environment, which includes Gmail, YouTube, search partners, Google Play. If someone downloads a car buying app, Google sees all of that, sees their browsing history as well as their search history. It's very easy to identify someone who is very actively looking for this as a person who is in market to buy a new car. And so using this information about people's past searching and browsing history is hugely valuable to someone rather than just trusting for what they're currently searching here. We see the fact that this person who is in market to buy a new car is very clearly invested across multiple searches rather than someone who is just beginning that process, and means that I'm more likely to convert on my site and more likely to purchase from me. We do see the fact that on average, across hundreds of advertisers who are using this solution for in-market audiences, we see that the reach of these in-market audiences is fairly limited and fairly focused. Generally, in-market audiences target about 5%, the top 5% of your searchers. So it is a very focused group of people who are actively searching for you. But we see that this very focused group, these people who are identified to be in-market, have more than double the click-through rate and the conversion rate of other audiences as a new visitor, per se. So just managing your ads for people who, either with a bid adjustment or by just targeting these audiences, is a very effective way to just get the very best people to your site and make sure that you're always showing up at the top of the page for these people who are demonstrating clear intent to come and purchase from you, rather than necessarily someone who's just beginning their search process. So that is certainly an exciting new targeting option over on the search side. Another targeting innovation that Google introduced was some more detailed demographic targeting. And they introduced this in November, and they didn't really publicize this a whole lot, that this is kind of a well-kept secret. But you're now able to target users based off of their demographics around their educational status or their educational attainment, or whether or not they're a student, their parental stage, homeownership, and their relationship status. So diving into those, we get a whole lot new demographics. We're able to go in and target, exclude, or create bid adjustments for users based off of their education, whether or not they're a current college student or what their highest level of educational attainment looks like. We're able to change our targeting for whether or not someone is single in a relationship or married, whether or not they rent or own a home, and whether or not their parents, and whether or not their parents are their children are infants, toddlers, preschoolers, grade schoolers, or teenagers. So just thinking about all of these things in play, we know the fact that someone who is searching for tutoring, that really does matter to them whether or not we have a teen at home versus whether or not they have an infant at home, or whether or not they have no children at home. There's a lot of obvious uses for targeting homeowners or people who are looking to get into grad school or something along those lines for these different demographics. But beyond that, just knowing the fact that all of these types of demographics do change the way that we live our lives and ultimately purchase online means a huge impact. So the fact that I'm hold an advanced degree is both an indicator of my education status, but it is also likely an indicator of my professional status or what my income looks like. And so knowing that I have additional money, I'm more likely to convert, or I might be in market for different products than necessarily someone of a different educational status. Or for instance, knowing the fact that I'm married makes me behave differently online and in life than someone who might be single. And so when I'm looking to purchase a vacation, I'm not going to book for that vacation for one. I'm going to be booking that vacation for me and my husband. And that means that I'm going to be spending more on your site. And that also means that I'm probably going to have to spend more time shopping for this because I have to get buy-in from the major stakeholder in my life because I control nothing on my own anymore. But all of these kinds of demographics suddenly shift just the way that I go about purchasing a product or service. And so more broadly, it does enable us a whole lot more control over how we begin to cater our ad campaigns towards them. This is really exciting. But not to be outdone, Google's not the only one that's been introducing new demographics into their platform. Over on Bing actually recently enabled LinkedIn profile targeting on their network. And so if that sounds a little out of left field, let me explain it. Microsoft bought LinkedIn back in 2016, and LinkedIn is, of course, one of the 5 largest social networks in the US. And over on LinkedIn ads, you can target advertisers, you can target demographics such as their professional details, things like their job title, their company size, their education, and the skills that they have. And that's lived over on LinkedIn for some time now. But it's important to note that Microsoft bought LinkedIn, but also owns Bing ads. So it's a really convenient place for Bing to easily reach across the Microsoft environment and see what the characteristics of their searchers look like. So fairly recently, Bing has been innovating and allowing advertisers to target users based off of information in their LinkedIn profile. So this has enabled people to target based off of what companies they currently work for, their industry, and their job function. So knowing the fact that I'm trying to advertise in a B2B setting, I might choose to target only certain companies or industries that might be relevant to me. Or knowing the fact that my key decision maker, the receptionist, might not be the person to buy my HR platform, but someone in HR, the VP of HR, someone in that job function is definitely the key decision maker. So when they're searching for me, I want to make sure that my ad always shows up at the top of the page for them. This is a unique targeting option that's unique to Bing ads. It's definitely really powerful, particularly for B2B advertisers. We've already seen good success from advertisers who early adopted this over on our side. And it comes out just at the perfect time of the year when a lot of people are planning for their Q1 or their 2019 purchases for a company, that over on Bing, this suddenly has become a huge professional B2B wealth. Just the fact that they're no longer able to debate between whether or not they're getting the high intent searchers over on Bing or having to choose from a sophisticated audience targeting. Using both search and social together, we see is always a winning combination. The fact that Microsoft owns both networks in-house means that they're able to adjust much quicker and really make the same play within the same platform. And I'm really happy with the results that we're seeing already just from this new LinkedIn profile targeting over on Bing. So I was able to cover about 8 things over the course of 40 minutes that happened in 2018. I know that that's not all that's happened, and I hope you guys have a whole lot of questions. So I'm going to shoot it back over to Michelle, where I believe, Michelle, you have a special offer for some people.
Unmuted.
Yeah. Okay, definitely. Mark, that was awesome. As always, fantastic content. Super excited to dive into some of these questions that we've got here. But just like Mark mentioned, we do have an offer for everybody who's on the webinar. So that was a lot lots of changes. It's a lot to keep up with, even for an expert. So if you're interested in seeing how WordStream can kind of alleviate some of those stresses and really help you navigate some of these big, massive changes that can help keep your account optimized with very little effort at all, you can go ahead and just indicate that there, and we'll set you up with one of our experts here on our team. And in the meantime, while you're deciding on those, we are a little bit crunched for time, and I'm going to try to squeeze in as many questions as I can for Mark. So let's get to it. Okay, right off the bat, Mark, we had a bunch of questions that kind of just around writing ads, best practices, different things like that. If you're customizing your ads based on persona, how do you make sure that the right people are seeing the right ads? I know that's like 10 questions in one, but any best practices there that you can see?
Yeah, absolutely.
Muted.
Cool. Thanks, Michelle, and thanks for dealing with my audio. Honestly, I could talk about ads and I have talked about ads for an hour. You know that. I could talk about it forever, to be honest. But if I were to make this as quick as possible, I'd say the big thing to focus on is focus on the needs of your searchers. It's really tempting for me as a marketer to know what I'm trying to sell you and that it's the best. That doesn't necessarily mean that people know that when they're searching for you, right? So specifically think about what is it that these people are searching for when they're searching for this keyword. So along that way, you're going to develop different personas, definitely go through that exercise of identifying what you think these personas are specifically looking for and build out that understanding of how you can begin to answer that with your ads. Now, as you're building out those personas and as you're thinking about these demographics and audiences, you can most certainly go through and write multiple different ads to speak to each persona. But if you wanted to do something more sophisticated, you could use something like a responsive search ads, which is going to help identify that best message match. Or if you want to always make sure that people in these audiences are served the correct ads, you could use something like leverage an audience list, so a remarketing list or detailed demographics or something along those lines. If you were to look at the WordStream blog and read about writing ad customizers by using if statements, that will always enable you to serve the right message to someone who is in one of those audience lists. So if you're looking to write a different ad for, let's say, your past customers, you could write an if statement that would identify that someone is a past customer and then serve them a slightly different message within that ad than necessarily someone who is seeing this ad for the very first time.
Unmuted.
Okay, so obviously ads, complex, there's so many tips, so many tricks. Mark mentioned a great resource, which is our blog. So definitely, if you're looking to dive a little bit deeper into that, you can head there. Okay, for another question. I love this question, Mark. And I think you might too. So with all these updates, all these innovations, targeting, so many different ways to reach your audience, is keyword research even important anymore?
So I love the question. You're right. I think that at the heart of it, yeah, you still, if we're playing the search game, right? It's still really important for me to know what people are going to be searching for. Just like when I'm talking about the personas, I don't know what message right away that they're going to necessarily be the best message for them. Identifying these personas and understanding the fact that how I search for my own product or service is wholeheartedly different than necessarily someone who has no idea what they're searching for. I'll use myself as an example. If you're an auto dealer, you probably already saw the fact that I've never bought a car before and I don't have the slightest idea how I would begin to search for a car. I had to have someone explain to me that example because I'm so foreign to the concept. From that, yeah, if you wanted to get me when I finally am ready to buy a car, you would have to think about all the different types of ways that I would search, and that is going to be different than the way that you search for your own product or service. So us as marketers kind of are blinded by what we don't do or what we don't see. So it's very easy for me to get started by creating a keyword list of things that I would search for my product or service. But beyond that, like as we begin to look at how other people would search for that, definitely keyword research comes into play, and always going through and reviewing part of these close variants and part of these new match types does give us some visibility into some of these different ways that people search, and could in fact enable me to learn a little bit more about how people are searching and add in appropriate new keywords. So I think that this is, a lot of the changes are both a double-edged sword here. Like, yep, I agree the fact that new keyword match types aren't always the greatest thing, but sometimes they give me visibility into things that I wouldn't have previously seen before. And I think that's Google's original purpose behind providing it.
Awesome. And that got followed up with another question that I absolutely love. So keywords are still important. They mentioned that we talked about WordStream software at the beginning of the webinar. Does WordStream help at all with keywords, the wild world of keywords?
Yeah, I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled to say we do. In fact, if you were to go to wordstream.com/keywords, we have a free keyword tool specifically there to help advertisers who are beginning to do keyword research or trying to get more out of their keywords to multiply their list and find new keywords right there as a free tool. Beyond that, the advisor software does weekly review your search terms between Google and Bing ads and identify the traffic that is coming through to add as keywords, and also identify the traffic that's coming through to add as negative keywords. So a lot of our WordStream customers have been grateful throughout this transition, where they are seeing increase in some garbage traffic. The fact that we're regularly looking out to identify that negative traffic, just suggested as a negative keyword, but also going through and seeing the new traffic that's coming through and finding out what here is valuable and what's really good for them to make a stake, make a keyword, and begin bidding on differently.
Great. Lots of great insight there. And unfortunately, that just about does it for all the time that we have today. I know there were some questions there that we didn't get to. Definitely head to WordStream, like we keep saying. I know it's a broken record. We've got tons of great info there. And even if you didn't take us up on our offer to chat with someone here on staff, you can always do that on our website. So have no fear. Once again, thank you all for joining us, and huge shout out to my friend Mark, always delivering the best information. So you all enjoy the rest of your day, and we hope to see you on a future WordStream webinar.